Hey YouTube, it's Edition 34 with part 2 of your projected September 2012 ban list. Picking up where we left off, Insector Dragonfly. This card's currently at 3 and it needs to go to 1 in order to control an exceedingly consistent, shall we say, powerful OTK-ish deck, Insectors. Anyone who's played against Insectors can easily tell why Dragonfly needs to go to 1. I think a banning, which a lot of people are calling for, is kind of excessive, because with this guy at 1, he's stoppable by current means. So the actual banning is, well, like I said, not necessary. You just need to do enough to keep the deck from having the insane consistency that it does now, and Centipede isn't nearly as good as Dragonfly. So Dragonfly, the only card on this list I didn't actually own a copy of right now and couldn't borrow because everybody's already gotten rid of them, is Wind Up Zenmaity, but this is essentially Wind Up Zenmaity. Zenmaity needs to go away just to kill the, needs to go from 3 to 1, that is, to kill the Wind Up's ability to just OTK as easily as they do. It's just silly what they can do with the Hunter, but the Hunter is not really to blame. It's Zenmaity, the rank 3 Ixies. With just one Zenmaity, you can't go off all the way and get rid of your opponent's whole hand the way he does. You could dent them, but you couldn't kill them. And it balances the deck because they don't have that many big monsters. And it also makes Valor a lot more potent against them, whereas previously he wasn't nearly as useful. So, Insector Dragonfly and Wind Up Zenmaity need to go from 3 copies each to 1. And speaking of things that are going to get a reduction, Tour Guide from the Underworld, not too much of a surprise. This card needs to go from 3 to 2. Yes, even with Sangan getting banned, this card still needs, and has needed for some time, to go from 3 to 2. The reason it hasn't happened before, of course, is because Konami wasn't done making their money off of it. But realistically, now that Epic Dawn's released it as a regular rare, quote-unquote, even with a lower print run, they've made about the most they're going to make out of it. People now have their copies, their sets. So now they can afford to do to it what they did to Crush, when Crush finally got released as a regular rare. It's very likely to happen, I feel, at least from where I'm sitting right now. Basically, the reason that with Sangan gone, this card still needs to go to 2 is because rank 3 Xyzes are very powerful, very utilitarian. Virtually every deck can use it. She stocks your grave for a lot of other things. 2 is fair, just because you can still make that rank 3 once, usually, but drawing 2 is a fear-worthy play, just like with Tengu. So it balances her. She doesn't need to go to 1, that's kind of pointless. 2 is enough to control her. So, Tour Guide from the Underworld is actually the only card I feel needs to go from 3 to 2 this format. So, Tour Guide going down to 2. And everything else is actually a comeback. First of all, going from 1 to 2 copies is Gladiator Beast Bestiary. This deck has dropped completely off the radar. And with the format and the other decks out there that are, and the ones that are going to be coming, Gladiator Beasts are definitely lagging behind, are going to have a very difficult time keeping up and keeping control. Even with 3 Chariots and 3 Valors, they still can't seem to keep up. So 2 Bestiary would give them a little bit more speed, a little bit more consistency, which might help them actually be kind of playable. So realistically, he's not going to do much damage at all. It just keeps that one Crow or Bottomless from completely ruining your deck. So yeah, this guy can go to 2. Also, TG Striker. Nothing's really going to get any more broke. Taking him down the way they didn't really make much sense. I think it was TG Skill Drain that was the reason this guy got taken from 3 to 1 in the first place, but that deck really wasn't even that consistently successful in the meta anyway. It was just a meta deck. Arguably, it was kind of tier 1.5 in some cases. So he can definitely go to 2, and that'll still be fine, and he's not going to break synchros or anything like that. Next up, Neospatian Grand Mole. Yeah, you might have to think about it, and if you're new enough to the game, you might have to look him up. But this guy, he's a very powerful card, but in a much slower format. So this guy can easily go to 2, arguably to 3, but this is one of those you got to kind of feel it out. 1 to 2 is a much safer move for him, and it balances him without him going, overpowered, which he wouldn't. But realistically, we're just going 1 to 2. Just to keep it all fair. Because his effect is way too slow to be much of a factor otherwise. Next up, Mirror Force. This card is very vulnerable with all the back row hate right now these days. It's almost unplayable, the 1 copy. 2 would give you a little more consistency, might help it actually hit in case the first one gets MST'd. 2 copies of Mirror Force would help a number of control decks to kind of maybe just get some control, but there's a lot of destruction and protection these days. So realistically, all those factors combine to make Mirror Force small enough of a threat that it can afford to be at 2. And that's it for all cards that go from 1 to 2. So that's moving from limited to semi-limited. And then Primal Seed is the only card that's going to be going from 1 to 3. Realistically, it didn't really need to get limited to 1 right now anyway, because Blacklist Your Soldier has to be on the field, and by the time he is, it doesn't really matter that you would have this effect, even though it would be quite good. So this card, especially with Blacklist Your Soldier banned, obviously can go all the way up to 3. So it's the only card going from 1 copy all the way up to 3 copies. And last, but certainly not least, one card is going from 2 copies to 3 copies, and that is Emergency Teleport. It's had very little to no impact on the current format at 2 copies, and I think 3 copies doesn't really do much more than that anyway. The difference between 2 and 3 is almost non-existent. It does promote synchros, but it also promotes Ixie's monsters, and tributing it promotes everything. And the Psychics haven't received much more expansion than they did before. It's kind of a slow card, and, well, realistically, there's just no reason to have it semi-limited anyway, at least not for the time being. So, for that reason, this card can easily afford to go to 3 copies. So from 2 to 3 is Emergency Teleport. And that's the whole video. That's my whole perspective September 2012 ban list. And so I encourage you, comment down below, like, dislike, whatever you feel. But let me know what you think. And until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more cool videos.